The mountains of Afghanistan held secrets the way graves hold bones. Deep, silent, permanent. It was 1985, and the Soviet occupation had turned the Hindu Kush into a graveyard where empires went to die.
It's not as bad as it
The
looks.
British had learned
Just
this
needs
lesson.
cleaning.
The Mongols before them. And now, it was Moscow's turn to bleed into the ancient stones. High above, a remote valley, where the air cut like broken glass, and the cold could stop a man's heart. A small team in the darkness. 6 shadows. American operators who officially did not exist. A CIA-backed SEAL unit conducting operations that would never appear in any history book.
This was taken
Their
just
target
before we
sat
shipped
below
out.
them. A Soviet
grandmother
forward
was so
operating
proud,
base carved into
even
the
though she knew what was
mountainside.
coming.
Concrete bunkers, communication arrays, intelligence assets that Washington wanted disappeared before sunrise. The team leader's voice came through their headsets, calm, precise, almost surgical in its lack of emotion. Angel 6 to all elements. We breach in 60 seconds. Thermal shows 8 hostiles in the main structure. Roving patrol just past the north entrance. Window is open. The operators checked their weapons one final time. Suppressed MP5 submachine guns. Thermite grenades for destroying equipment. Combat knives that had tasted blood in a dozen countries most Americans couldn't find on a map. But something felt wrong. The youngest operator, a SEAL named Pierce, couldn't shake the feeling crawling up his spine. 24 years old, fresh from BUDS training. This was his 3rd mission behind Soviet lines, and his instincts were screaming. Angel 6, he whispered into his radio. Something's off. Pattern's too clean. A pause. Then that voice again. Still calm, but with an edge now. Like steel wrapped in silk. Elaborate 7. Patrol timing. It's textbook. Too textbook. Like they want us to think we have a window. Another pause. Longer this time. The mountains held their breath. Good catch, 7. All elements hold position. Reassessing. Through his night vision goggles, Pierce watched Angel 6 move forward alone. Whoever the team leader was, they moved like smoke. Like something that existed between the spaces where light couldn't reach. The operator scanned the base with equipment that wouldn't be declassified for another decade. Then spoke again. Spetsnaz counterintelligence team. They've been waiting for us. It's a trap. The words hit like a physical blow. One of the operators, a combat veteran of Vietnam, growled into his radio. We abort. Negative. That calm voice. Unshakable. New plan. We have 30 seconds before they realize we spotted them. 7, you're with me. Rest of the element collapse east. Extraction point, Charlie. Move now. Angel 6. You can't. That's an order. Execute. Pierce watched 4 shadows melt into the darkness, moving fast toward safety. He stayed frozen, waiting for Angel 6 to move. The team leader appeared beside him, so quietly he almost fired on instinct. Stay low. Stay quiet. We're going to give them something to chase. What happened next, Pierce would remember for the rest of his life. Angel 6 moved through the Soviet base like a ghost conducting a symphony of chaos. A thermite grenade placed on a fuel depot, not thrown, placed. With the kind of precision that spoke of someone who understood exactly how fire moved through enclosed spaces. The explosion came 8 seconds later. Flames erupted into the night sky, turning darkness into hell. Alarms screamed. Soviet soldiers poured from barracks shouting and Russian weapons raised. Angel 6 was already gone. Pierce followed his heart hammering against his ribs. They moved along a ridgeline, drawing fire, leading the Soviets away from the rest of the team. Then the second trap sprung. A Spetsnaz operator materialized from behind a boulder. Fast, professional, the kind of soldier who had survived a war that ate men whole. Pierce's weapon was still coming up when Angel 6 stepped between them. The fight lasted 4 seconds. A disarm, a strike to the throat, a takedown that used the enemy's momentum against him. Techniques Pierce had never seen before. Russian martial arts, Systema, the kind of training that took years to master. The Soviet soldier hit the ground unconscious. Move! Angel 6 commanded. They ran. Behind them, more soldiers, more gunfire, bullets cracking against stones, spraying rock dust into the thin mountain air. Pierce heard the distinctive sound of a grenade hitting the ground before he saw it. He had half a second to recognize it. D5. Soviet fragmentation grenade. 4-second fuse. Angel Six's hand shot out, grabbed the grenade, and threw it back in a motion so fluid it seemed rehearsed. Almost. The grenade detonated in midair, 10 feet from Angel Six's position. The explosion was white-hot, thermite. Someone had rigged it. A trap within a trap. Pierce saw Angel Six go down, saw the spray of blood, heard the sharp intake of breath that spoke of pain beyond words. Angel Six. He moved without thinking, grabbed the team leader, started dragging them toward cover. That's when he saw it. The team leader's sleeve had burned away, and there on the inside of the wrist, a burn mark. Fresh, brutal. The kind of scar that would never fully fade. But more than that. In the firelight for just a moment, Pierce saw Angel Six's face. Young. Impossibly young. Maybe mid-20s. And unmistakably female. His mind couldn't process it. Women didn't serve in combat roles, weren't allowed in special operations. Yet here was proof. Bleeding, fighting, leading. 7. Her voice was strained now, pain cutting through the calm. You need to move. I'll cover you. Like hell. That's an order. She raised her weapon with her good hand, fired 3 controlled bursts, each shot perfect. Each shot buying them seconds they didn't have. Pierce made a choice. He grabbed her tactical vest and dragged her backward. 50 yards, 100, into a crevice between boulders where shadows pooled like black water. Behind them, the firefight intensified. Angel Six radio crackled, the rest of the team calling for status. She lifted the handset. Her voice was steady again, professional, like she wasn't bleeding out in a mountain crevice in Afghanistan. Angel Six, mission complete. Exfilling now. 7 is with me. Angel Six, we're coming back. Negative. Stay on extraction route. That's a direct order. We'll make our own way out. Pierce applied pressure to her burned arm. She didn't flinch. You should have left me, she said quietly. Ma'am, I don't leave anyone behind. A slight smile crossed her face, barely visible in the darkness. Neither do I, 7. That's why we're both going to make it out of here. And somehow, against every odd, they did. 3 days later, they reached the Pakistan border. Barely alive, but alive. Pierce never learned Angel Six's real name. Never saw her face again. The mission was classified at a level that didn't officially exist, but he remembered that voice, that calm, that absolute certainty under fire, and he remembered the burn scar on her wrist. Years later, when Pierce became an instructor at the Naval Special Warfare Center, he would sometimes tell stories about the operators who had shaped him, about the lessons learned in the mountains where empires died. But he never spoke about Angel Six. Some legends were meant to stay buried. Some secrets were meant to remain hidden in darkness, until they weren't. 40 years later, the Rusty Anchor Bar Camp, Pendleton, California, Saturday night, 11:47 p.m. The bar smelled like every military watering hole Pierce had ever known. Beer, sweat, ambition. The kind of place where young warriors came to blow off steam, and old warriors came to remember what it felt like to be young. Colonel Nathan Pierce, retired, sat in his usual corner booth. 64 years old now, gray at the temples. Lines on his face that mapped out 3 decades of classified operations across 4 continents. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, a faded flannel shirt. Nothing that marked him as what he'd been, what he still was in the ways that mattered. The Rusty Anchor drew. Marines, like gravity, drew water. Camp Pendleton sat just outside, and on weekend nights the bar filled with young men testing themselves against cheap whiskey and cheaper bravado. Pierce nursed a beer he'd barely touched. He came here once a month, not to drink, to watch, to remember what it felt like when the whole world stretched ahead like an unwritten story. The music was too loud, some modern thing with too much bass and not enough melody. But the energy was familiar, that electric current of youth and testosterone and the unshakable belief that nothing could touch you. Pierce knew better. He'd buried too many men who believed they were bulletproof. His eyes tracked movement automatically. Old habits, the exits, the windows, the faces that didn't quite fit the crowd. 40 years of operational awareness didn't just switch off because you signed retirement papers. That's when he saw her. She sat alone at a corner table, late 20s, compact build, maybe 5'6", dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, jeans and a plain black shirt that could have come from any department store. Nothing remarkable, except everything about her was remarkable once you knew how to look. The way she sat, back to the wall, eyes scanning the room in a pattern that wasn't quite random. The way her right hand rested on the table, fingers loose but ready. The way she tracked the front door every time it opened, not looking directly, but using the reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Pierce had seen that stillness before, in operators, in the quiet professionals who did the work no one else could do. But it was something else that made his breath catch in his chest. She wore a small pin on her shirt collar, old, worn, the kind of thing most people wouldn't notice. A seal trident, but not the modern design. This was the variant used in the mid-1980s, before the design was updated, before the specifications changed. Pierce had only seen that exact pin design once before, on an operator in the mountains of Afghanistan, on someone who had saved his life and vanished into legend. His hand tightened on his beer glass. The woman's eyes flicked toward him for just a moment. Dark eyes, calm, assessing, then away again, like she'd cataloged him and moved on. Pierce felt something he hadn't felt in years. Recognition, not of the person, but of the presence. Before he could think about approaching her, the energy in the bar shifted. 3 Marines pushed through the front door. Young, loud, fresh from deployment, or just finished with some training exercise that made them feel invincible. The one in front was tall, 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. Staff sergeant, if Pierce had to guess. Maybe 32, old enough to have seen combat, young enough to still think it made him bulletproof. His 2 companions followed like satellites orbiting a planet. The staff sergeant's name was Derek Stone, though Pierce didn't know that yet. What Pierce did know, watching Stone move through the bar with that particular swagger, was that trouble had just walked in, wearing a confident smile. Stone and his Marines claimed a section of the bar like territory being conquered. Voices rising. Laughter too loud. The kind of performance young men put on when they need the world to know they're warriors. Pierce had been that young once, had carried that same energy. Before life taught him that real strength didn't need to announce itself. The woman in the corner didn't react to the noise, didn't turn to look, just kept her hands on the table, eyes on the middle distance, as if she existed in a separate reality from the chaos around her. But Pierce saw the micro-adjustment, the way her posture shifted slightly, the way her left foot moved an inch to the side, adjusting her base. She'd cataloged the threat before it knew it was a threat. 20 minutes passed. Stone worked his way through the crowd like a shark through deep water, stopping at tables, telling stories that got louder with each retelling. His Marines laughed on cue. Other patrons either joined in or moved away, depending on their tolerance for aggressive energy. Then Stone noticed her, the quiet woman, sitting alone, not reacting to the noise, not trying to be part of the crowd. Pierce saw the moment Stone made his decision. The staff sergeant changed course, headed toward her table with that walk, that casual, predatory confidence that came from never being told no. Pierce's hand moved to his phone, not sure what he was planning, just knowing that whatever was about to happen, he needed to be ready. Stone stopped at her table. "You look lost, sweetheart." His voice carried, meant to. His 2 Marines watched from the bar, grinning. The woman didn't look up. "I'm fine, thank you." Her voice was quiet, firm, the kind of tone that ended conversations. Stone didn't hear it that way. "Navy right, I can always tell. You've got that admin look, pushing papers somewhere comfortable while the real work happens outside the wire." Now she looked up. Her eyes met Stone's. Flat, calm, the kind of look that should have stopped him cold. You're welcome to think that. Stone leaned against her table, casual, invasive. What do you do? Let me guess. Supply personnel? Something where the air conditioning works and nobody shoots back. Pierce watched her hands. They hadn't moved, hadn't tensed, but something had shifted in the air around her, like the moment before lightning strikes. I work in operations, she said quietly. Stone laughed. Operations? Right. Coordinating schedules. Making sure the real operators have their paperwork filed on time. One of his Marines called out from the bar. Stone, leave the poor admin alone. She looks like she might cry. Laughter rippled through the nearby tables. The woman's expression didn't change. Pierce stood up, his instincts screaming now. This was about to go somewhere bad. He could feel it in his bones. But before he could move, the woman spoke again. Staff Sergeant? Stone blinked. She'd identified his rank without seeing a uniform, without any visible insignia. How did you? Your posture, your presence, the way your subordinates defer to you. You're senior enlisted. Infantry, probably. Multiple deployments. You carry yourself like someone who's earned their position. Stone's face flickered, caught between being flattered and unnerved. Impressive. You read people. I observe people. There's a difference. She started to stand, movement fluid, no wasted energy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to leave. Stone shifted, not dramatically, just enough to block her path. Come on, stay a while, have a drink. Maybe you can tell me more about this operations work that keeps you in the air conditioning. Pierce was moving now, crossing the bar, every instinct telling him this was going wrong fast. The woman stood perfectly still. Staff Sergeant, you're standing in my way. Am I? Stone smiled. Maybe you need to ask nicely. That's when her phone rang. Not rang, pierced. A high-pitched tone. Mechanical. Urgent. The kind of sound that made Pierce's spine straighten on pure reflex. A recall alert. At the exact same moment, Pierce's phone vibrated in his pocket. Same pattern. Same urgency. His blood turned to ice. Pierce pulled out his phone, saw the message flashing across the screen. Ravenfall. Priority Alpha. Immediate response required. He looked up, across the bar. The woman was reading the same message on her phone. Stone was still talking, still oblivious. Your boyfriend calling, checking up on you. The woman's entire demeanor changed. Not dramatically, but Pierce saw it. The way her shoulders squared, the way her weight settled into the balls of her feet, the way her eyes went from off-duty awareness to operational focus. She was no longer in a bar. She was at work. Staff Sergeant. She said, her voice different now. Command voice. The kind that moved through radio static in hot zones. You have 5 seconds to step aside. Something in her tone finally registered with Stone. His smile faltered. Or what? Or, I move you myself. Stone's face flushed. Anger mixing with wounded pride. His hand came up. Not a punch. Not yet. But aggressive. Reaching for her shoulder to move her aside. She moved. Pierce barely tracked it. A lifetime of watching operators in action, and he barely saw what she did. Her left hand deflected Stone's reach. Her right hand found a pressure point on his wrist. Her foot swept behind his ankle in a motion so economical it looked choreographed. Stone hit the floor, hard. The entire bar went silent. Stone lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, his right arm completely numb, his breath knocked out of his lungs. The woman stepped over him. Not around, over, like he was an obstacle that no longer mattered. She walked toward the door. Pierce stood frozen, his mind racing through possibilities, through connections, through memories that should have stayed buried. The technique she'd used, Russian martial arts, Systema, the same style he'd seen once before in the mountains of Afghanistan. His hand went to his phone. He stared at the alert again. Ravenfall. He'd been out of active service for 6 years, retired, put out to pasture as an occasional consultant and instructor. They'd never recalled him before, which meant, whatever this was, it was beyond serious. The woman reached the door, her hand on the handle. Pierce made a decision. Commander? His voice cut through the silence, quiet but carrying, the tone of someone who knew the weight of ranks and protocols. She stopped, hand still on the door, but she stopped. Slowly she turned. Her eyes met his across the bar. Pierce saw something flicker in her gaze. Recognition. Assessment. A question being asked and answered in the space of a heartbeat. He stepped forward, pulled his retired identification from his wallet, held it up so she could see the name and the clearance level. Colonel Nathan Pierce, retired SEAL, strategic advisor. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Colonel, a single word, acknowledgement, respect. Ravenfall recall? Yes, sir. Then we're heading to the same place. She looked at him for a long moment, measuring, deciding, then nodded once. Stone was climbing to his feet, face flushed, humiliation burning brighter than any physical pain. What the hell was... Staff Sergeant? Pierce's voice stopped him cold. That alert on her phone, that means she's cleared for operations you don't have the security level to even know exist. And based on what I just saw, she's better trained than anyone in this bar. Stone stared. She's someone you severely underestimated. Now get yourself together. If that alert went out to active duty personnel at Pendleton, they're going to want every able body in operations. The woman was already out the door. Pierce followed. Outside, the California night was cool, clear. Stars overhead that didn't care about human conflicts or classified operations. She was standing beside a nondescript sedan, keys in hand. Pierce approached slowly, carefully. Commander, I don't believe we've been formally introduced. She studied him, those dark eyes seeing more than most people ever would. You recognize the technique. In there. It wasn't a question. I did. Where? Pierce met her gaze steadily. Afghanistan, 1985. I was part of a team conducting classified operations against Soviet positions. Our team leader used the same style. Saved my life. Something flickered across her face. Too fast to read. The team leader's designation? Pierce's throat was suddenly dry. Angel 6. The world seemed to stop. She stood perfectly still, processing, connecting, understanding something Pierce didn't yet grasp. Colonel Pierce? Her voice was softer now. How much do you remember about Angel 6? Not much. It was classified at levels I didn't have access to. I never learned a real name, never saw much of a face, but I remember, he hesitated, I remember a burn scar on the wrist from a thermite grenade that went wrong. She lifted her left hand, pulled back her sleeve, and there on the inside of her wrist was a scar. Old, faded, but unmistakable. A burn mark, irregular. The kind that came from thermite and bad luck and a split-second decision that saved lives at the cost of flesh. Pierce's world tilted. I'm not Angel 6. She said it quietly, definitively. But I know who was. How? She looked at him, and for the first time, Pierce saw something beyond the operational mask. Something human and painful and complicated. Because Angel 6 was my mother. The words hung in the night air. Pierce felt like he'd been hit. 40 years. 40 years he'd carried that mission in his memory. The mystery operator who moved like smoke and commanded like thunder. And now, he was standing in a parking lot in California looking at her daughter. Your mother, Sarah Cross, CIA, died on a classified operation in 1997. I was 10 years old. Pierce's mind raced, doing the math. If she was 10 in 1997, she'd be born around 1987, 2 years after that mission in Afghanistan. Did she ever tell you about saving a young SEAL in the Hindu Kush? About a thermite grenade and a 4-day escape to Pakistan? The woman smiled slightly. She told me stories, before she died, stories about the mountains and the work that mattered and the people who did it without recognition or reward. Pierce felt his chest tighten. What's your name, Commander? Maya Cross? Commander SEAL Team 7, Task Unit 7 specifically. The pieces clicked into place. Task Unit 7. Pierce had heard whispers, rumors, stories about a unit that didn't officially exist. That handled operations too sensitive for the regular SEAL teams. That operated in shadows so deep, even other special operations forces didn't know they were there. Shadow Actual. That was the designation. The commanding officer of Task Unit 7. He looked at Maya Cross with new understanding. Your Shadow Actual. Yes, sir. And you're being recalled for Ravenfall. We're being recalled, Colonel. That message went to both of us. Pierce pulled out his phone again. Read the message more carefully. Ravenfall. Report to Camp Pendleton Operations Center. Strategic planning required. Estimated operation duration 48-72 hours. Threat level critical. Below that, a line he'd missed before. Colonel Pierce, advisory role authorized. Your expertise is required. He looked up at Maya. They pulled me out of retirement, which means this is more than a standard operation. Ravenfall protocols are reserved for situations where conventional approaches have failed or aren't applicable. What do you know about it? Nothing yet. The brief will come at the operations center, but if they're activating you as strategic advisor, she paused. Whatever this is, it's going to require old school expertise. Pierce felt the old familiar sensation, the tightening in his chest, the clarity of purpose, the knowledge that somewhere in the world something was going wrong and needed people like them to make it right. He was 64 years old. He should have been home, should have been watching late-night television and thinking about what to have for breakfast. Instead, he was heading into whatever Ravenfall meant, and he'd never felt more alive. My car's over there, he said, pointing to a truck at the edge of the lot. I'll follow you to base. Maya nodded, started to open her car door, then paused. Colonel, what you saw in there? With the staff sergeant. Yes, that stays quiet. I don't need word spreading about bar fights before a major operation. Understood. Though for what it's worth, Commander, you handled that situation with remarkable restraint. A slight smile crossed her face. My mother taught me that silence is strength, and that the loudest people in the room are usually the ones who haven't seen real combat. Pierce smiled back. Your mother was a smart woman. I'm glad I finally got to meet someone who knew her. Maybe after this is done, we can talk about her. I'd like to hear your stories. I'd like that. They drove in convoy toward Camp Pendleton. Behind them, the Rusty Anchor continued its Saturday night chaos. Stone stood in the parking lot watching them go, his mind still trying to process what had happened. He didn't know it yet, but his entire worldview was about to shatter, because in 20 minutes, he'd be standing in an operations center, and the quiet woman he'd dismissed as admin was going to be the one giving him orders. The base was lit up. Even from a mile out, Pierce could see the activity. Vehicles moving, personnel running, the controlled chaos that meant something serious was happening. They cleared security. Pierce's credentials were checked twice. Old protocols being dusted off because someone somewhere had decided his specific experience was critical. Maya drove with the same efficiency she did everything else. No wasted movement, no unnecessary speed, just purpose and motion. The operations center sat in the heart of the base. Concrete and steel and technology that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. They parked, stepped out. Maya looked at Pierce across the hood of her car. Colonel, whatever happens in there, however this mission unfolds, I need to know I can count on you. Commander, you have my word. Whatever this is, we'll handle it. She nodded, satisfied. They walked toward the entrance. Behind them, more vehicles were arriving. Marines, SEALs, support personnel pulled from weekend leave and late-night relaxation. Stone's truck screeched into the parking lot. He climbed out, still wearing civilian clothes, his face a mixture of confusion and barely controlled anger. He saw Maya and Pierce entering the building. Saw the way sentries snapped to attention. Saw the way people moved aside. And for the first time, doubt began to creep into his certainty. Inside the operations center, the temperature dropped 10 degrees, not literally, but the atmosphere, the weight. This was where decisions were made that changed the world in ways the world would never know about. Pierce felt it in his bones. The gravity, the significance. A Navy rear admiral stood at the central display. Screens showing satellite imagery, thermal maps, intelligence reports scrolling faster than human eyes could track. Admiral James Hawthorne. Pierce knew him by reputation. A serious man, a careful man, the kind of officer who didn't authorize operations unless he was absolutely certain they were necessary. Hawthorne looked up as Maya entered. His expression shifted. Relief mixed with something else. Commander Cross, thank God, we've got a situation. Maya stepped forward. All business. Admiral. Status. 2 American journalists. Captured 72 hours ago in Syria. We have intelligence suggesting Russian-backed mercenary forces are moving them to a secure location. Once they're moved, we lose any chance of recovery. Pierce listened, his mind automatically processing the information. Hostage recovery. High-value targets. Russian involvement. This was the kind of operation that could go very wrong very quickly. Timeline, Maya asked. We have a 12-hour window. After that, the targets are gone, probably into Russian custody proper. At that point, it becomes a diplomatic nightmare. Rules of engagement: minimal footprint, no direct engagement with Russian military forces. The mercenaries are fair targets. But if this escalates to a firefight with official Russian personnel, it becomes an international incident. Maya nodded. Processing, planning. Behind them, the operations center was filling. Marines, SEALs, officers, and enlisted personnel all called in from whatever they'd been doing. Stone entered, saw the crowd, saw Maya standing at the center of it all next to an admiral. His confusion deepened. Hawthorne's voice cut through the murmur of conversations. Listen up, we've got a time-critical situation. Commander Cross will be leading this operation. The room went quiet. Stone's jaw dropped. Commander Hawthorne continued. For those of you who don't know, Commander Cross is Shadow Actual, commanding officer of SEAL Task Unit 7. She's been running classified operations for the past 4 years with a perfect mission success rate. Pierce watched the realization ripple through the room, especially through the Marines, especially through Stone. The quiet woman from the bar, the one Stone had dismissed and mocked and physically challenged. She wasn't admin. She was the commanding officer of the most elite SEAL unit in the United States military. Maya stepped up to the main display. Her voice carried without being raised. We have 12 hours to plan and execute a hostage recovery in hostile territory against a professional enemy force. This is not a training exercise. This is not a demonstration. 2 American lives depend on us doing this right. She pulled up satellite imagery. The terrain materialized in 3 dimensions. The compound is here, fortified. 3 layers of defense, approximately 20 to 30 hostile forces on site. Standard Russian military doctrine for perimeter security. She zoomed in, highlighted weak points with the efficiency of someone who'd studied 1,000 similar compounds. Insertion will be here. 2-click hump to the target. We breach at the northwest corner where the wall shows structural weakening from recent shelling. Officers were taking notes. SEALs were nodding. This was a professional briefing from someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Maya continued. We'll divide into 2 elements. Alpha element. My team will conduct the breach and hostage recovery. Bravo element will establish a blocking position here. She highlighted the eastern approach. That's the most likely avenue for enemy reinforcements. She paused. Let the weight of the next statement settle. Bravo element is critical. If enemy quick reaction forces break through that position, the entire mission fails. We lose the hostages. We potentially lose both elements. The room absorbed that. Maya's eyes scanned the gathered personnel, stopped on Stone. Staff Sergeant Stone. Every eye turned to him. Stone's face drained of color, his earlier anger and humiliation crystallizing into something else. Fear. She was going to destroy him. Publicly. For what happened at the bar. In front of his Marines and every operator in the room. He waited for it. You'll lead Bravo element. 12 Marines, Eastern Corridor. That choke point is yours to hold. Silence. Absolute silence. Stone's mind couldn't process it. She wasn't punishing him. She was giving him the most critical position in the entire operation. Ma'am, do you understand your orders, Staff Sergeant? Stone swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. Hold the Eastern Corridor. Don't let QRF break through. Correct. Mission success depends on your team maintaining that position, regardless of enemy pressure. Can you do that? He looked into her eyes, saw no anger, no retribution, just absolute professionalism. Yes, ma'am. We won't let you down. Maya nodded once, then moved on. Colonel Pierce? Pierce straightened. You'll be in the Tactical Operations Center, Strategic Oversight. Your experience with Soviet-era doctrine and Russian military tactics will be invaluable. I need someone who can think like the enemy commander. Understood, Commander? The briefing continued. Details, timing, contingencies. Pierce watched Maya work, saw the way she commanded the room. Not through volume, not through intimidation, through sheer competence. She was her mother's daughter. No question. An hour later, the room began to clear. Personnel moving to their staging areas. Gear being checked. Weapons being prepped. Stone approached Maya, his two Marines hanging back, uncertain. "Commander Cross, ma'am?" She turned, patient, professional. "Staff Sergeant, I need to apologize. For earlier, at the bar, I was drunk and stupid and—" She held up a hand. "Staff Sergeant, we have a mission in 11 hours. What happened at the bar is irrelevant. What matters is whether you can do your job when it counts. Can you—" Stone stood straighter. "Yes, ma'am?" "Then that's all I need to know. Get your Marines ready. I'm trusting you with the most important position in this operation." "Why?" The question burst out before he could stop it. "After what I did, why would you trust me with that?" Maya looked at him steadily. "Because I don't command based on personal feelings. I command based on capability and need. You're a good Marine Staff Sergeant. You've proven that on multiple deployments. You made a mistake. We all make mistakes. The question is what we do after." She turned to walk away, then paused. "And for the record, the technique I used on you, it's called Systema, Russian martial art. My mother learned it during the Cold War. She passed it on to me, along with a lot of other lessons about staying quiet and letting your actions speak." Stone watched her go. For the first time in years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten. Humility. Pierce found Maya in the armory an hour before mission launch. She was checking her gear with the methodical precision of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. He knocked on the door frame. "Commander, got a minute?" She looked up. "Colonel, what's on your mind?" Pierce stepped inside, closed the door. "Your mother, Sarah. Did she ever tell you about the mountain operation? About what really happened?" Maya's hands paused on the weapon she was cleaning. "She told me she saved someone. A young SEAL. Said he reminded her why the work mattered." "That was me." Maya nodded. "I figured when you described the scar." Pierce moved closer, kept his voice low. "Did she tell you how she got it?" "She said a grenade went wrong. She grabbed it and threw it back. The thermite coating caused the burn." "That's true. But what she probably didn't tell you is that she didn't have to grab it. She could have taken cover. Could have let me take the hit. It would have been the tactically sound decision." Maya's eyes met his. "But she didn't." "No, she didn't. Because your mother was the kind of operator who believed that everyone comes home. That the mission matters, but the people matter more." Maya's expression softened slightly. "She used to say that. Everyone comes home. Even when it wasn't realistic. Even when the odds said otherwise." Pierce smiled. "She meant it, and she lived it. I'm alive because she lived it." A moment of silence. Then Maya spoke quietly. "I've spent my whole career trying to live up to her legacy. Trying to be the kind of leader she was. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just chasing a ghost." "You're not chasing anything, Commander. You're becoming exactly what she hoped you'd become. I saw you brief that mission. I saw the way you handled Stone. You're not your mother. You're yourself. And that's exactly what you need to be." Maya absorbed that, nodded once. "Thank you, Colonel." "One more thing." Pierce pulled something from his pocket, an old photograph, creased, faded. "I carried this for 40 years. Never knew if I'd ever have a reason to give it to anyone." He handed it to Maya. The photograph showed a group of operators in the mountains. 5 faces. And one figure, with their back to the camera, face obscured. "That's your mother. The only photo I have from that mission. I thought you might want it." Maya took the photograph, stared at it. Her fingers traced the outline of the figure, the way her mother stood, the stance, the presence. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means." Pierce nodded, turned to leave. At the door he paused. "Your mother would be proud, Maya. For what it's worth, from someone who knew her when it mattered most. She'd be incredibly proud." Then he was gone. Maya stood alone in the armory, holding a photograph of a legend, her mother, her inspiration, her ghost. Outside, helicopters were spooling up. The mission clock was counting down. In 11 hours, everything would change, and Maya Cross, daughter of Angel 6, commander of Shadow Actual, would prove that legends don't die. They just pass the torch. The photograph sat on Maya's gear bag like a question waiting to be answered. She'd looked at it 17 times in the past hour, counting, a nervous habit she'd developed as a child. When things mattered, she counted breaths, heartbeats, Seconds until insertion. The operations center hummed with controlled chaos, screens displaying real-time satellite feeds. Communication specialists coordinating with assets half a world away. The mechanical rhythm of preparation before violence. Pierce stood at the tactical display next to Admiral Hawthorne. They were discussing approach vectors and enemy response patterns. The Admiral deferred to Pierce more than once. Even in retirement, even after 6 years away from active operations, Pierce carried authority that couldn't be faked. Maya watched him point at the holographic terrain, explaining something about Soviet-era defensive doctrine, how Russian military thinking hadn't fundamentally changed since the Cold War. Different equipment, same philosophy. They'll stack their response on the Eastern approach, Pierce was saying. It's the widest avenue, best vehicle access. They'll assume we're American, which means they'll assume we want speed and mechanized support. Hawthorne nodded. So we do the opposite. We go quiet, we go slow. We use the terrain the way their doctrine says we won't. Maya approached. The two men looked up. Commander Hawthorne acknowledged. Your team's staged? Yes, sir. Wheels up in 40 minutes. I wanted to review the intelligence package one more time. Pierce pulled up the latest imagery. Thermal scans from 3 hours ago. 27 heat signatures in the compound. 3 in the building we believe holds the hostages. Guard rotation every 4 hours. Last rotation was 90 minutes ago, which means we'll hit them at their most complacent, 2 hours into a 4-hour shift. Maya studied the patterns, the spacing, the predictability. Too predictable, she said quietly. Both men looked at her. Explain, Hawthorne requested. Professional mercenaries don't operate on perfect 4-hour rotations. They stagger, they randomize. They know patterns or vulnerabilities. She zoomed in on the guard positions. This looks like a pattern designed to be observed, to be analyzed. Pierce's eyes narrowed. You think it's a trap? I think it's possible we're not the only ones running an operation tonight. Russian intelligence knows we'll come for those journalists. They might be waiting to see how we do it. Study our tactics, our capabilities. Hawthorne's jaw tightened. If that's true, this becomes significantly more dangerous. It was always dangerous, sir. This just changes the nature of the threat. We go in assuming they're ready for us. We adapt accordingly. Pierce smiled slightly. You sound like your mother. Maya met his eyes. She taught me to question the obvious, to look for the trap inside the trap. When did she teach you that? The question hung in the air. Maya's expression shifted, something old and painful moving behind her eyes. I need to show you something, Colonel. Admiral, with your permission. Hawthorne nodded. Brief me before insertion. Maya gestured for Pierce to follow. They moved to a smaller briefing room, empty, quiet. She pulled out a tablet, entered a security code, then another, then a biometric scan. The screen came alive with classified files. What you're about to see is compartmentalized at a level that required special authorization to access. Admiral Hawthorne approved my request 2 hours ago. She turned the tablet toward Pierce. A personnel file, heavily redacted, but enough visible to tell a story. Cross, Sarah M. Central Intelligence Agency. Special Activities Division cleared for Phoenix Program. Cold Steel. Angel Protocols. Pierce read through the visible sections. Mission reports from the 1980s. Operations in Afghanistan, Nicaragua, East Germany. A career spent in shadows, fighting wars most people didn't know existed. Your mother was CIA, he said. I knew that. But this level of classification, she wasn't just CIA, she was part of a program that no longer officially exists. Angel Protocols. It was an experimental unit. Female operators conducting deep cover operations in regions where women could move invisibly, where a man would be stopped and questioned, a woman could pass unnoticed. Pierce looked up. That's brilliant, and completely against every military doctrine of the era, which is why it was classified above top secret. The program ran from 1982 to 1997. My mother was Angel 6. There were 11 others. By the time the program was dissolved, only 3 were still alive. She scrolled to another document, a mission report, Afghanistan, 1985. The same operation Pierce had been part of. You said she saved your life, Maya continued. I need to know exactly what happened, because this report, she pointed to a section, heavily redacted. This section describes an incident involving thermite and a critical decision, but the details are blacked out. Pierce sat down. the weight of 40 years pressing against his chest. We were compromised. The Soviets knew we were coming, set up a layered ambush. Your mother realized it before we walked into the kill zone. She aborted the primary mission and turned it into a diversion, drew the enemy forces away from the rest of the team. And you went with her. I was the newest member, youngest. She didn't order me to come. But I couldn't let her go alone. Maya waited, patient. Pierce continued. We made it about a click before they cornered us. Soviet Spetsnaz. Professional. Deadly. Your mother fought 3 of them hand to hand. Techniques I'd never seen before. She won. Barely. Then more soldiers came. They threw a grenade. She grabbed it. I thought she was going to throw it back. He paused, remembering. But she didn't. She held it for almost 2 seconds. Long enough for the fuse to burn down to almost nothing. Then she threw it. It detonated in midair, close enough that the thermite compound sprayed back. That's how she got burned. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Why would she hold it that long? Because if she'd thrown it immediately, they would have had time to take cover. By holding it, she guaranteed the detonation would hit them. She traded her safety for mission success. Tears formed at the corners of Maya's eyes. She blinked them back. That sounds like her. Pierce reached across the table, placed his hand over hers. Your mother was the bravest operator I ever served with, man or woman. She didn't prove herself by being louder or stronger. She proved herself by being smarter and more willing to sacrifice. Maya nodded, pulled her hand back gently, wiped her eyes. She died when I was 10, another classified operation. They wouldn't tell me details, just that she died in service to her country. For years, I didn't even know what she really did. I thought she was a translator, a diplomat, something safe. When did you learn the truth? When I graduated from Buddy Sess. My instructors pulled me aside, said there was something I needed to see. They showed me her file, told me who she really was, what she'd accomplished. Pierce watched emotions play across Maya's face. Pride, pain, loss. Is that why you joined the SEALs, to follow her path? Maya shook her head. I joined before I knew. I joined because something in me needed to serve, needed to be part of something bigger. When I found out about her, it just made sense. Like I'd been walking toward her legacy without knowing it. She stood, paced to the window. Outside, helicopters sat on the tarmac, rotors still, waiting. I've commanded Task Unit 7 for 4 years, 23 missions, all successful, 0 casualties. I've built a reputation as someone who brings everyone home, just like she did. That's not a coincidence. No, it's not, but sometimes I wonder if I'm trying to live up to her legend instead of being my own person, if I'm chasing something I can never quite reach. Pierce stood, moved beside her. Can I tell you what I see when I look at you? Maya turned. I see an operator who just identified a potential trap that 2 senior officers missed. I see a commander who gave a second chance to a Marine who disrespected her because she understood that people matter more than ego. I see someone who carries her mother's legacy, not as a burden, but as a foundation. He paused. You're not chasing your mother's ghost, Maya. You're building on what she started. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Maya held his gaze. Something settled behind her eyes. A decision made. Thank you, Colonel. Nathan, when it's just us, call me Nathan. A small smile. Thank you, Nathan. An alarm chirped. 30 minutes to insertion. Maya straightened, the weight visibly lifting from her shoulders, the operational mask sliding back into place. Time to work. They returned to the main operations center. The energy had shifted. Pre-mission focus. That particular intensity that comes when theory becomes reality. Stone stood with his Marines, checking gear, going through procedures. He looked up as Maya entered. Their eyes met. He nodded. Respectful. Ready. Maya gathered her SEAL team. 6 operators, men she'd worked with for years. Men who'd trust her with their lives because she'd proven again and again that she'd never waste that trust. Senior Chief Thomas Garrett, 42 years old, veteran of 2 decades of special operations, steady, unflappable. Petty Officer Jake Reeves, 25, 3rd mission with the unit, still proving himself but showing promise. Chief Michael Chen, 38. Weapons Specialist. Could make a rifle sing from 1,000 yards out. Petty Officer First Class James Mitchell. 31. Breacher. Explosives expert. The man who opened doors when doors didn't want to open. Senior Chief Garrett spoke first. Commander, what's the play? Listen up. Last brief before we step. Intelligence suggests possible enemy awareness of our operation. We go in assuming they're ready. Assume the patrol patterns are deception. Assume the obvious approach is covered. Garrett nodded. So we adapt. We adapt. Primary insertion route stays the same because changing it now introduces more variables than it eliminates. But once we're on the ground, we go full ghost protocol. No comms, unless critical. No lights. We move like we're already compromised. Reeves shifted his weight. Nervous energy barely contained. And if we are compromised, Maya looked at him directly. Then we prove why they're right to fear us. The team absorbed that. No bravado, just quiet confidence. Maya turned to Stone's group. Bravo Element, your mission hasn't changed. Eastern Corridor, you're the wall. If enemy QRF tries to push through, you hold, no matter what. Stone stepped forward. Commander, permission to speak freely? Granted. My Marines are good. We'll hold that position. But if things go sideways, if you need us to push in and support the hostage extraction, we can do that too. Maya shook her head. Negative. I need you to trust the mission design. Your position is critical precisely because you hold it, not because you abandon it to reinforce us. Can you do that? Stone struggled with it. The urge to be everywhere, to never let his people fight alone. Pierce stepped in. Staff Sergeant, I've run more operations than I can count. The hardest job is always the one where you hold position and trust others to do theirs. It takes more discipline to stay than to move. Can you exercise that discipline? Stone looked between Pierce and Maya, saw the combined weight of decades of experience looking back at him. Yes, sir. We'll hold. Good man, Pierce said. The final checks happened quickly. Weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, communications equipment. Every piece of gear inspected twice. Triple checked. Maya strapped on her plate carrier. The weight familiar, comforting. She'd worn this gear in a dozen countries. It had absorbed impacts that should have killed her. It was more than equipment. It was armor that carried the weight of promises. The promise to bring everyone home. She reached into her bag, pulled out something small. The vintage seal trident pin from her mother. She attached it to her vest, hidden under a pouch, where no one would see it but her. A reminder. A talisman. A connection to the woman who'd walked this path before her. Pierce appeared at her shoulder. Ready? As I'll ever be. Your mother used to say that. Before every mission. Like she was acknowledging the impossibility while accepting it anyway. Maya smiled. I say it because it's true. You're never fully ready. But you do it anyway. That's the job. That's the job. They walked toward the helicopters. The night air cool against skin that would soon be sweating under body armor in a Syrian desert. The Ghost Hawk sat waiting. Black, sleek, nearly silent in flight. Technology that didn't officially exist being used for a mission that would never officially happen. Maya's team boarded the first helicopter. Stone's Marines took the second. Pierce would remain in the operations center coordinating from thousands of miles away, while trying not to think about the fact that Sarah Cross's daughter was about to step into a hot zone. The rotors began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, the whine building to a roar. Maya put on her helmet, checked comms. Shadow actual to all elements. Comms check. One by one, her team checked in. Garrett, Reeves, Chen, Mitchell, then Stone's Marines. Tactical to shadow actual. Pierce's voice. Steady. You're cleared for departure. Weather is clear. Enemy activity nominal. You have a clean window. Copy tactical. Shadow element lifting off. The helicopter rose. Smooth. Controlled. The ground falling away beneath them. Maya looked out the open door. Watched Camp Pendleton shrink. Watched the California coast disappear. Watched America fade into the distance as they flew toward a small piece of Syria that was about to become very dangerous. Reeves looked nervous. This was his third mission with the unit. Still learning. Still finding his confidence. Maya caught his eye. gave him a slight nod. He nodded back, steadier. Leadership wasn't always about grand speeches or tactical brilliance. Sometimes it was just a nod that said, "I see you. You're not alone. We've got this." The flight took hours, mid-air refueling over the Atlantic. A brief stop at a forward operating base that didn't appear on any map. Then the final leg into Syrian airspace, flying low, using terrain to mask their approach. The pilots were artists, threading needles through radar coverage, making a 40-ton helicopter invisible through skill and technology. Stone sat in the second bird watching his Marines. They were young, tough, but he could see the nerves, the questions they wouldn't ask out loud. Lance Corporal Ryan Cole was the youngest, 22. First deployment with Stone's unit. Good kid, solid Marine. But untested in the way that mattered most. Corporal David Grant sat beside Cole, 29. Stone's second in command. Reliable, professional. The kind of Marine you built a career on. Grant leaned close to Stone, shouted over the rotor noise. "Sarge, you think she knows what she's doing?" Stone thought about Maya, about the way she'd moved at the bar, the way she'd briefed the mission, the way she'd given him the most critical position despite every reason not to trust him. "Yeah," he shouted back. "I think she knows exactly what she's doing. Even if the Russians are waiting, especially if they're waiting, that woman is her mother's daughter. And her mother was a legend." Grant looked confused. Stone didn't explain further. Some things you couldn't explain. You just had to trust. The Syrian desert appeared below them, dark, endless, ancient. This was land that had seen empires rise and fall, had absorbed the blood of countless armies, stretching back to before recorded history. Tonight it would absorb a little more. Pierce watched the helicopter feeds from the operations center, thermal imaging showing 2 aircraft moving through hostile airspace, tracking perfectly, on schedule. Admiral Hawthorne stood beside him. "She's good." "She's exceptional," Pierce corrected. "Just like her mother. You really knew Cross. Briefly, 40 years ago. But some people you never forget." "What was she like?" Pierce considered the question. "How do you describe a legend to someone who only knew them as a file? Imagine someone who could walk into a room full of people who underestimated her and leave having earned their absolute respect without ever raising her voice. Someone who made impossible decisions look easy because she'd already thought 3 steps ahead. Someone who would die for her people without hesitation, but was smart enough that she usually didn't have to." Hawthorne nodded slowly. "And her daughter. Her daughter is all of that, plus 40 years of evolution in tactics and technology, plus the weight of knowing what her mother was. That could crush someone. Instead, it made Maya stronger." The aircraft were 15 minutes from the insertion point. Pierce activated the command channel. "All elements, this is tactical. We're entering the final approach window. Enemy activity remains nominal. No indication of heightened alert status." Maya's voice came back. Calm. "Copy tactical. Shadow element preparing for deployment." Pierce watched the thermal feeds. Watched the helicopters adjust their approach. Watched the countdown timer tick towards 0. And remembered another night. Another operation. Another helicopter flying into a mountain range where death waited. He'd been terrified that night. Young, inexperienced, certain he was flying toward his end. Angel 6 had seemed fearless, unbreakable. Years later, he'd understood. She wasn't fearless. She was just more afraid of failing her people than of dying herself. Maya carried the same weight now. 2 minutes, the pilot's voice announced. Maya's team prepared. Weapons hot. Night vision active. Every operator running through final mental checks. Stone's Marines did the same. The helicopters descended. Flared. Touched down in a cloud of dust and rotor wash. Go, go, go. Bodies poured out. Moving fast. Spreading out. Taking security positions. The helicopters lifted off immediately, leaving the 2 teams alone in hostile territory. Maya took a knee. Scanned the terrain through her night vision. Green-tinted world, shadows within shadows. "Shadow element secure. Moving to objective." Stone's voice. "Bravo element secure. Moving to blocking position." They split. Maya's team heading northwest toward the compound. Stone's team heading east toward the corridor They'd defend with their lives if necessary. The night swallowed them both. Pierce watched the GPS trackers on his screen. Two groups moving through digital terrain. Tiny icons representing human beings walking into the unknown. God go with you, he whispered. On the ground, Maya moved. Her team flowed behind her like water. Silent, professional. Every movement practiced 10,000 times until it was more instinct than thought. Garrett moved beside her, reading her hand signals, anticipating her decisions before she made them. 20 years of experience compressed into perfect synchronization. The compound appeared ahead. Walls, lights, guard towers. It looked exactly like the intelligence briefing, which made Maya more nervous than if it had looked different. She held up a fist. Her team stopped. She studied the compound, counted guards, timed their movements, looked for the tells that would indicate awareness. Nothing. Too perfect. She activated her comms, whispered, "Tactical shadow actual. Compound appears as briefed. No deviation. Recommend extreme caution." Pierce's voice. "Copy shadow actual. Trust your instincts." Maya signaled her team. They moved forward, slower now, every sense alert. Behind them, miles away, Stone's team reached their position. The eastern corridor, a narrow approach between two rocky ridges. Perfect kill zone for anyone trying to push through. Stone positioned his Marines. Overlapping fields of fire. Cover and concealment. Everything by the book. Grant took the left flank with Cole. Stone held center with two others. The remaining Marines covered the right approach. Then they waited. The hardest part of any operation. The waiting. Maya reached the compound wall, placed a hand against it, felt the texture, the temperature. Something was wrong. She couldn't explain it, couldn't articulate it, but every instinct screamed warning. She looked back at Garrett. 20 years in special operations. If anyone would understand, it was him. She pointed at the wall, then at her eyes, then made a questioning gesture. Garrett moved forward, examined the wall himself, frowned. He held up his hand, pointed at the stone. Fresh mortar, recently repaired. They moved along the wall, found another patch, and another. Someone had been reinforcing this section within the last few days. Maya's mind raced. Why reinforce a wall right before a potential raid? Unless you knew someone was coming. Unless you wanted to ensure they breached exactly where you expected them to breach. She made a decision, changed the plan, signaled her team, pointed at a different section of wall, one that showed age and wear, one that hadn't been recently touched. Her team adjusted without question. Trust built over years of operations together. Maya placed a breaching charge, small, precise, just enough to create an opening. She activated her comms one more time. "All elements shadow actual. Going loud in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The charge detonated. The night exploded into chaos. And in the operations center, thousands of miles away, Pierce leaned forward, watching, praying, hoping that Sarah Cross's daughter was as good as he believed she was. Because the easy part was over. Now came the hard work. Now came the fighting. Now came the moment where legends were either born or buried. The explosion tore through the compound wall like a surgical incision. Precise, controlled, exactly wide enough for operators to flow through in a tactical stack. Maya went first, always first. A commander who led from the front, because that's what her mother had taught her without words. Through actions, through sacrifice. Her night vision painted the world in shades of green. The breach point opened into a courtyard, empty, too empty. She raised her fist. Her team froze. Through her earpiece, Pierce's voice came soft. Tense. Shadow actual thermal shows movement. Second floor, northeast corner. 3 signatures. Maya processed. The hostages should be ground floor. These signatures were elevated, observing. Overwatch positions, she whispered into her mic. They're watching the breach points. Confirmed. They knew you were coming. Maya's mind worked through scenarios. If the enemy had prepared observation posts, they'd have prepared response positions too, which meant the obvious route to the hostage building would be covered. Waiting. She signaled her team. changed direction. Instead of moving straight across the courtyard toward the main structure, she led them along the perimeter wall, using shadows, using the enemy's assumptions against them. Behind her, Garrett moved like a ghost. 20 years of experience reading terrain, reading threats, reading the spaces between danger where skilled operators could exist. They reached the corner of the courtyard. Maya held up 3 fingers. 3 tangos in the tower above. She pointed at Garrett, pointed at the tower. Garrett nodded. He unslung his suppressed rifle, aimed. The night vision scope painting targets in artificial light. 3 shots, so quiet they barely registered above the ambient wind. 3 bodies dropped from view. Maya didn't wait for confirmation. She moved. Her team flowed behind her. 6 shadows crossing open ground with the confidence of people who understood violence intimately. They reached the main building. The walls were thick, old. This had been some kind of government facility before the war, before it became a hideout for mercenaries who sold their skills to the highest bidder. Maya pressed her hand against the door. Tested it. Locked. She placed a small breaching charge, shaped, directional. Technology that would blow the lock without destroying the entire door. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The charge popped. The door swung open. Maya entered in a crouch, weapon up, scanning. Her team spread out behind her, taking angles, clearing corners, moving with the choreographed precision of people who'd done this so many times. It was muscle memory, written in gunpowder and midnight insertions. The hallway stretched ahead, doors on both sides, darkness pooling in doorways like standing water. Pierce's voice in her ear. Shadow Actual, you have heat signatures. Ground floor. 3rd door on your right. 2 signatures stationary, consistent with restrained postures. The hostages. But also, 4th door on the left. 6 signatures. Armed. Waiting. An ambush inside an ambush. Maya stopped her team. Thought through options. They could breach the hostage room. Extract. Run. But they'd have to fight through 6 armed hostiles in a narrow hallway. Casualties were almost guaranteed. Or, she looked at Garrett, made a series of hand signals. Complex, nuanced, a language built over years of operating together. Garrett's eyes widened slightly. Then he grinned. It was a crazy plan, which meant it might actually work. Maya pointed at Chen and Mitchell, directed them to stack on the ambush room, the one with 6 hostiles waiting to spring their trap. The rest of her team stacked on the hostage room. She held up her hand, counted down with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. Both doors exploded inward simultaneously. Flashbangs detonated. The world turned white and loud and disorienting. Maya's team hit the hostage room. 2 guards, stunned, reaching for weapons they'd never get to. 2 suppressed shots. Both guards dropped. In the corner, 2 figures, zip-tied, blindfolded, terrified. Maya moved to them, spoke quietly, firmly. American military, we're here to extract you. Stay quiet, stay low, do exactly what we say. One of them, a woman, maybe 40, nodded frantically. The other, a man in his 50s, was shaking but managed to nod as well. Maya cut their restraints. Garrett and Reeves were already pulling them up, getting them moving, in the hallway. Chen and Mitchell had breached the ambush room, caught the 6 mercenaries still disoriented from the flashbang, still expecting targets to come through one door while operators came through behind them. The fight was over in seconds. Maya's team moved, hostages in the center, protected, moving back toward the breach point. That's when the compound's alarm finally sounded. Loud, urgent, the kind of noise that meant every hostile in a 5-mile radius was about to converge. Pierce's voice. Urgent now. Shadow Actual, you've got company. Multiple vehicles approaching from the east. ETA 4 minutes. The eastern approach, where Stone's Marines were positioned. Maya keyed her radio. Bravo Element Shadow Actual, you're about to have visitors. QRF inbound. Multiple vehicles. Stone's voice came back. Steady. Ready. Copy Shadow. We see them. We're set. Maya's team moved faster. The hostages struggled to keep up. Soft, untrained, terrified. But they moved because the alternative was worse. They reached the courtyard, crossed toward the breach point. Gunfire erupted behind them. The mercenaries were responding. Disorganized, confused, but armed and dangerous. Maya's rear guard returned fire. Controlled bursts, not trying to win a firefight, just buying seconds. They reached the breach, started pushing the hostages through. That's when Maya heard it. The distinctive sound of a Russian-made heavy machine gun, PKM, firing from somewhere above. Tracers cut through the darkness, green, bright, deadly. Reeves went down, hit in the leg, screaming. Maya grabbed him, started dragging him toward the breach. Garrett appeared beside her, took Reeves' other arm. Together they pulled him through. Behind them, more gunfire. The compound was fully alert now, lights coming on, voices shouting in Russian and Arabic. Maya's team collapsed back through the breach. All accounted for. One wounded, but all alive. They moved into the desert, fast as they could, with wounded and civilians behind them. The compound erupted with activity, vehicles starting, lights sweeping the darkness, and ahead, to the east, the sound of heavier guns. Stone's position was under attack. 4 miles east. Stone watched the headlights approach through his night vision. Counted vehicles. 6, maybe 7. Moving fast. His Marines were positioned on both sides of the corridor, overlapping fields of fire, anti-armor weapons ready. Cole was on his left, young, nervous. This was his first real firefight. "Stay calm," Stone said quietly. "Wait for my command. Pick your targets. Controlled fire." "Roger, Sarge." The vehicles were closer now. Stone could make out details. Technical trucks, mounted machine guns, maybe 40 fighters total, professional mercenaries with military training. This was going to hurt. Stone activated his radio. "Tactical Bravo element, enemy QRF entering engagement range." "Engaging now." Pierce's voice. "Copy Bravo. Shadow element is extracting with hostages. You need to hold that corridor. Do not let them break through." "Understood." Stone raised his hand. His Marines tensed, fingers on triggers, breathing controlled. The lead vehicle entered the kill zone. Stone dropped his hand. Hell erupted. Anti-tank rockets streaked out, hit the lead vehicles. Explosions bloomed orange and red against the darkness. Metal screaming, men screaming, machine gun fire from both sides of the corridor, tracers creating a deadly crossfire, vehicles shredding under the onslaught. But the enemy was professional. They didn't panic, didn't retreat, they deployed. Used the burning vehicles as cover, started returning fire with discipline and precision. Stone's position took hits, bullets cracking against rocks, RPGs exploding close enough to shower them with stone fragments. Cole fired in controlled bursts, just like training, but his hands were shaking. Grant moved between positions, directing fire, keeping the Marines focused. "Shift to fire left. They're trying to flank." The Marines adjusted, caught the flanking element in the open, cut them down, but more kept coming. Stone realized something with cold certainty. They weren't trying to break through. They were trying to pin him, hold him in place while other forces moved around. He keyed his radio. "Shadow Actual Bravo. They're fixing us in position. You've got flankers moving around us, north side." Maya's voice came back, breathing hard, running. "Copy Bravo. How long can you hold?" Stone looked at his Marines, looked at the enemy still pressing, looked at the ammunition counts he was tracking in his head. "As long as you need, ma'am." A pause. Then, "Bravo. You are authorized to fall back if your position becomes untenable. I will not trade your lives for ours." Stone felt something shift in his chest. She was giving him an out, permission to save himself and his Marines. He thought about the bar, about his ego, about dismissing her as admin who didn't understand real combat. She understood better than he ever had. "Negative Shadow. We're holding. Bravo element will not fall back. Get those hostages home." Another pause. When Maya spoke again, her voice carried something that might have been respect. "Copy Bravo. Shadow element moving to support your position." "Say again." "We're not leaving you." Stone's throat tightened. "Ma'am, your mission is hostage extraction. We're the blocking force. You need to get them out. The mission is to bring everyone home, Staff Sergeant, and that includes you." Before Stone could respond, before he could argue, the radio went silent. Maya had made her decision. She always brought everyone home. Maya's team was running. The hostages stumbling between operators, Reeves being half carried, half dragged by Chen and Mitchell. They should have been heading to the extraction point, should have been getting the civilians to safety. Instead, Maya turned them north, toward the sound of gunfire, toward Stone's position. Garrett moved beside her. Commander, the hostages. We'll stay with Chen and Mitchell at a secured position. The rest of us are going to get those Marines out. Garrett didn't argue. He'd served with her long enough to know that when she made a decision, it was final, and it was usually right. They reached a rocky outcrop. Maya positioned the hostages there with Chen Mitchell and the wounded Reeves, armed, protected, hidden. Hold here. If we're not back in 20 minutes, make your way to primary extraction. Yes, ma'am. Maya took Garrett and 2 others from Stone's original team who'd been cross-attached for this mission. 4 operators total, against what sounded like a company-sized enemy force. The odds were terrible, which meant they were about right. They moved fast, covering ground with the efficiency of operators who'd learned to run in full kit in a dozen different deserts. The sound of fighting grew louder. Stone's position was taking heavy fire. Maya could hear the intensity, the desperation, the sound of men fighting for their lives. She crested a ridge, looked down, saw Stone's Marines, outnumbered, surrounded on 3 sides, still fighting, still holding, but barely. Pierce's voice in her ear. Urgent. Shadow Actual, you're off course. What's your status? Tactical. We're moving to support Bravo element. A pause. Then Pierce's voice. Different now. Understanding. Like mother, like daughter. Maya almost smiled. She surveyed the battlefield, saw the enemy positions, saw the tactical situation, saw exactly how to turn this around. She signaled her team. They spread out along the ridge, high ground, overlooking the enemy. She activated her radio. Different frequency. The one Stone's Marines were using. Bravo element. Shadow Actual. We have overwatch on your position. When I give the word, drop smoke and pull back 50 meters. We'll cover your movement. Stone's voice. Shocked. Grateful. Shadow, you should be extracting. We extract together or not at all? Acknowledge orders. Roger. Smoke and pull back on your mark. Maya sighted down her rifle. Her team did the same. 4 rifles. Suppressed. Precise. Firing from elevation at targets who didn't know they were there. Execute. Now. Below. Stone's Marines popped smoke grenades. Purple smoke billowed, obscuring their positions. The Marines pulled back, fighting withdrawal, disciplined, and from the ridge. Maya's team opened fire. The enemy never knew what hit them. 1 second, they were pressing an advantage. The next, their fighters were dropping. Headshots, center mass, professional marksmanship delivered with surgical precision. The mercenaries broke, scattered, confused, leaderless. Stone's Marines reached better cover, set up new positions, caught their breath. Maya's team continued firing, suppressing, dominating. Within 2 minutes, the enemy was retreating, leaving their dead, leaving their wounded, running from an enemy they couldn't see. Silence fell over the corridor, broken only by the ringing in ears and the harsh breathing of exhausted men. Maya stood, moved down the ridge, her team following. She reached Stone's position, found him checking his Marines, making sure everyone was accounted for. He looked up as she approached. His face was smoke-stained, exhausted, but his eyes were clear. Commander, you came back. I said everyone comes home, Staff Sergeant. I meant it. Stone stood, drew himself to attention. Ma'am, thank you, for my Marines, for me. I don't know how to... Maya cut him off. You held that position when others would have run. Your Marines fought like professionals. You did your job, I did mine. That's how this works. She looked at his team. Young faces, scared faces, but proud faces too. You all did well. Your country will never know what you did here tonight, but I will, and I won't forget. The Marines stood a little straighter. Pierce's voice came through, calmer now. All elements. Extraction birds are inbound. ETA, 10 minutes. Get to primary LZ. Maya nodded. You heard the man. Let's move. The combined force, SEALs and Marines together, moved toward the extraction point. The hostages were retrieved, everyone moving as one unit now. They reached the LZ as the helicopters appeared, ghost hawks descending from the night sky. like mechanical angels. The wounded were loaded first, Reeves wincing but managing a thumbs up, then the hostages, then the rest of the team. Maya stood at the helicopter door, counting, making sure everyone was aboard. Stone appeared beside her. "Commander, I need to say something." "Make it quick, Staff Sergeant. We need to be airborne." "That night, at the bar, I was wrong. About you. About what you do. About who you are. I let my ego and my assumptions blind me. I'm sorry." Maya looked at him. This young Marine who'd learned a hard lesson about underestimating people. "Staff Sergeant Stone, you're a good Marine. You made a mistake. You owned it. You performed when it mattered, in my book. That's all that counts." She held out her hand. Stone shook it, firmly, respectfully. "Now get on the bird. We're going home." The helicopters lifted off, rising into the Syrian night, leaving behind a battlefield that would be sanitized before dawn. A mission that never officially happened. Hostages who would be debriefed and told to never speak of how they were rescued, inside the helicopter. Maya sat next to Reeves, checked his bandages, made sure he was stable. He looked up at her, young, maybe 25. "Commander, thank you for not leaving us." "I don't leave people, Reeves, not ever." Across the cargo bay, Stone sat with his Marines. They were quiet, processing, coming down from the adrenaline. Grant leaned close to Stone. "Sarge, she's not what I expected?" "No, she's better. She's exactly what we needed." The flight back took hours, mid-air refueling, the long journey across continents. The sun rose over the Atlantic, painting the ocean in shades of gold and red. Maya watched through the open door, thought about her mother, about operations like this that Sarah Cross had run in the 1980s. Before Maya was born, before anyone knew women could do this work. Her mother had opened a door. Maya had walked through it, and behind her, more would come. They landed at Camp Pendleton as the California sun climbed toward noon. The operations center was waiting. Debriefs, reports, the necessary machinery of classified operations. Admiral Hawthorne met them on the tarmac. His face showed relief, satisfaction. "Commander Cross, outstanding work. Mission success. Hostages recovered. 1 wounded. No casualties. Thank you, sir." But it wasn't just me. Staff Sergeant Stone and his Marines held against overwhelming odds. My team performed flawlessly. Colonel Pierce's strategic guidance was invaluable. Hawthorne nodded. "I've already recommended commendations for everyone involved." He lowered his voice. "There's something else. We captured intelligence from the compound. It confirms your suspicion. The Russians were waiting. They'd been tipped off, prepared an ambush. If you'd gone in the expected way, used the expected tactics, it would have been a massacre." Maya absorbed that. "Who tipped them? We're investigating. But Commander, your instincts saved lives tonight. Your ability to adapt, to see the trap. That's why you command Task Unit 7. He saluted. She returned it. The team dispersed to barracks, to showers, to sleep, to the routines that helped operators transition from combat back to something resembling normal life. Pierce found Maya in the armory 2 hours later. She was cleaning her weapon, the ritual, the meditation. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up, smiled slightly. "Colonel, please." He sat, began cleaning his own sidearm, even though he hadn't fired it, even though he'd been thousands of miles away. Old habits. They worked in silence for a while, not the awkward quiet of strangers, but the comfortable silence of people who understood each other. Finally, Pierce spoke. "Your mother would be proud. You've said that before. Because it's true. What you did tonight, going back for those Marines. That was her. That was Angel 6. The commander who would rather risk herself than leave anyone behind." Maya's hands paused on her weapon. "I keep wondering if I'm living up to her, or just living in her shadow. There's a difference, isn't there?" Pierce set down his cleaning rod, looked at her directly. "Maya, your mother was exceptional. But she operated in a time when women had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. She had to be perfect, because anything less would be used against every woman who came after her." He paused. "Let that sink in. You operate in a different era. Not an easier one, just different. You still face doubters, still face men like Stone who underestimate you. But you also have something your mother never had. What's that? Proof. Proof that women can do this work at the highest level. Your service record, your mission success rate, the respect you've earned from the people who matter. That's not living in her shadow. That's building on her foundation. Maya felt something loosen in her chest, a weight she'd been carrying without fully recognizing it. Thank you. Nathan, you're welcome. Maya. They finished cleaning their weapons, put them away, stood. Get some sleep, Pierce said. You've earned it. What about you? I'm too old to sleep after missions. I'll probably sit in the operations center and pretend to write reports while actually just replaying everything that could have gone wrong. Maya smiled. That's very specific. Experience. She started to leave, then turned back. Nathan, one more thing. The photograph you gave me of my mother in Afghanistan. I want you to have it back. Pierce shook his head. It's yours. No, I had it copied. I want to keep a copy, but the original. I think you should have it. You were there. You shared that moment with her. It belongs to you as much as anyone. She pulled the photograph from her pocket, handed it to him. Pierce took it, looked at the faded image, at the figure with her back to the camera, at the mountains, where he'd learned what real courage looked like. Thank you, he whispered. Maya nodded, then left. Pierce stood alone in the armory, holding a photograph that bridged 40 years, connecting a young SEAL in the Hindu Kush to an old colonel in California, connecting a legendary operator to her equally legendary daughter. He smiled. Some legacies didn't die. They just changed forms. 2 days later. The Rusty Anchor Bar, Saturday night. The usual crowd, the usual noise. Maya sat at the same corner table. Same jeans, same plain black shirt, same vintage SEAL trident pin. But this time, she wasn't alone. Stone approached, his 2 Marines with him, Cole and Grant. They stopped at her table, respectful, uncertain. Commander, ma'am, we were wondering if you'd let us buy you a drink to say thank you properly. Maya looked up, considered them. These young Marines who'd learned that courage came in all forms, that strength wasn't always loud. I'm off-duty staff sergeant. Call me Maya. Stone smiled, relieved. Yes, ma'am, Maya. They sat. Conversation flowed, easier than it should have been. They talked about training, about deployments, about the strange things you see in foreign countries. They didn't talk about the mission. That was classified, buried, gone. But they all carried it. A shared experience that would connect them for the rest of their lives. Across the bar, the old bartender, the Vietnam veteran, watched them, saw the easy camaraderie, the respect. He smiled, pulled out an old photograph from behind the bar, faded, creased, from 1985. A woman in civilian clothes sitting at that same table. Sarah Cross, Angel 6. He'd served with her once, long ago. Didn't know her real name then. Didn't know it now. But he recognized her daughter. Recognized the way she carried herself, the quiet strength, the legacy. He walked over, placed the photograph on the table. This was taken here, long time ago. Thought you might want to see it. Maya picked it up, stared. Her mother, young, sitting at this same table in the same bar. How did you? I was tending bar that night too, 40 years ago. She came in, sat alone, quiet, just like you. Some loud Marine started giving her trouble. She handled it, then left. Never saw her again. But I kept the picture. Reminded me that the strongest warriors don't need to announce themselves. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back. Thank you. The bartender nodded, walked away. Stone looked at the photograph, looked at Maya. That's your mother. Yeah. She looks like you. Maya smiled. I look like her. She pulled out her phone, took a picture of the photograph, sent it to Pierce with a message. Found another one. His response came seconds later. She's still watching over you. Maya set down her phone, looked at the Marines sitting with her, at Stone, who'd gone from adversary to ally in the span of one mission. You know what my mother used to say? Stone shook his head. She said that real strength doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't demand respect. It earns it. It doesn't need to prove anything because it simply is. She lifted her glass. To quiet warriors, past and present, the ones who do the work without needing the world to know. They lifted their glasses, clinked them together. To quiet warriors. Outside, the California night settled over Camp Pendleton. Over the base where warriors trained and planned and prepared for the next mission, the next crisis, the next moment when ordinary people would have to do extraordinary things. Inside the operations center, Pierce sat reviewing mission reports, smiling at Maya's success, proud of the commander she'd become. His phone buzzed. A message from Maya. The photograph. He stared at it, at Sarah Cross, at the woman who'd saved his life and shaped his understanding of courage. And he thought about her daughter, about the mission they'd just completed, about the legacy that continued. Some stories never end. They just pass from one generation to the next, each adding their own chapter, their own victories, their own proof that legends are made not by being loud, but by being excellent when no one is watching. Maya Cross sat in a bar where her mother had sat 4 decades before, surrounded by Marines who respected her, not because of her rank or her gender, but because she'd earned it, through skill, through sacrifice, through being exactly who she was, without apology. She touched the vintage seal trident pin on her shirt, her mother's pin, her legacy, and whispered a promise to the memory that lived in that metal, in that bar, in the mountains where empires died and legends were born. I'll carry it forward, quietly, the way you taught me. The music played, the crowd laughed, the world continued spinning, and in the shadows, where the strongest warriors have always lived. Maya Cross smiled, because she finally understood. She wasn't chasing her mother's ghost. She was honoring her mother's legacy. And there was a difference, a profound difference, one that made all the silence, all the sacrifice, all the quiet strength worth everything.